FBI/CIA agents of Reddit, what's something that you can tell us without killing us? Am I on the list? A harmless question. You can buy marshmallows at your local supermarket. I'm not one, but my friend is. She went off the grid after she graduated college, got recruited by the CIA. She told us she was interested and majored in political science. I hope she's doing well. Secret you should know. Removing tag on pillow will get you tortured. Don't tell anyone, but we spy on people sometimes. In the 80s/90s with marginal seismometers and a little computing power, people in Australia tracked nuclear explosions. That's the cover story. Think about what people with today's seismometers and supercomputers can do. The plastic tips at the ends of shoelaces are called aglets. Their true purpose is sinister. If you go through the FBI interview process, it takes a while. Chances are you're going to have to spend some time working on crimes against children, which is really tough and most people don't want to do it. Operation Ivy Bells was a plan to tap Soviet communication lines. The cover story they used was that they had divers diving down to recover fragments of a new Soviet supersonic anti-ship missile. The communication line tap was a failure due to a spy, however the dive teams successfully recovered all fragments of the missiles from the Soviet weapons tests. The US was able to reverse engineer one and subsequently learned they were radar-guided only and the assumed IR guidance did not exist. We really think we are special, hence our job description of Special Agent Scully. Yeah, you'd like to know what accounts belong to FBI/CIA agents, wouldn't you? Nice try, Vladimir. Edit, thanks for the awards, you kind people, glad I gave you all a good laugh, folded hands. That gum you like is going to come back in style. Related, I was in the sauna at my gym when this naked old man with extremely long testicles started talking to me. Somehow the conversation ended up on the topic of my new roommate, who happened to be Saudi Arabian. He then proceeded to tell me he worked for the FBI and knew exactly who I was and asked if I would like to make some money, every now and then, for giving him information. I said sure, not because my roommate was sketchy, but because he got drunk one day and pissed on my couch. This was 10 or so years ago and I never really heard from him, but I think my phone was tapped for a short span of time. An ex-company man once told me Get Smart was more accurate than James Bond. We have full access to Google's ad network. If we really want to track someone, we use that. Not a federal agent, but like come on, there's literally an API in the source code for it, and you think it's not being used? This could have benefited from a serious tag. We are all told never to use sites like this, and social media in general is pretty much a no-go. I talked with some CIA recruiters towards the end of college and almost applied earnestly after a large group Q&A and then a much smaller one. The thing that stuck out to me was that the guys said most CIA agents are out of shape and have limited combat training with guns or hand-to-hand. They made it clear that it's the military that uses force. If confronted, they were trained to immediately surrender, or to drop their bags and run if possible. My dad worked for the government, and he told me that anytime he had a meaningful interaction with someone who wasn't American, going over to my friend's house for Lunar New Year, or going on vacation to Canada, he had to report it all, and if he saw anything suspicious. This was a test. You've all failed your security checkup. Turn in your badges and your guns. There is a book called Moscow Rules. It was written by 2 CIA people, all about, well, disguise. The CIA had all these agents in Russia, but the Russians were insane about following literally every single American in Russia, 24/7. Looking for spies. So a huge part of their job was trying to shake off the KGB. They had crazy quick change disguises, all sorts of stuff. The movie Argo was based on one of the writers somewhat. The ducks at the pond are free. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but a mentor who definitely wasn't supposed to tell me used to be a white hat for the FBI. Apparently, all he did was search for pedophiles by tracking child pornography. He said he didn't stay for very long because it was messing with his mentality. Edit, if you guys were wondering, he left to join the Navy. Became a nukem, but they pulled him out of the program because of his cybersecurity skills, and before I left our command, he was helping our CMC connecting his computer to a projector. Sorry to put you on the spotlight, EM1. My great-uncle told us late in his life that he didn't work for GE as an engineer his whole career. He actually worked for the CIA, and that's all he would say. Edit, since you're up in my business, my great-uncle was a very Christian man. I doubt he was lying or suffering from dementia. That said, I was young when he died and fuzzy on the details. This is the most disappointing comment section on Reddit. If I can trust that she's telling the truth, there's an old lady in town who was in the FBI back in 50s/60s. She said Nikita Khrushchev was a short man. Intelligence work is really boring most of the time. Worked with a woman who was former NSA. We would always beg her to tell us shit, but she never did. The one thing she did say, though, was that during training they show them a video of a bunch of things they found out about and stopped. She said she hardly slept for 2 weeks after watching that. Everyone knows Reddit is full of government agents with high security clearance just waiting to endow us with their secrets. My father works at NSA and doesn't tell me shit. So I wouldn't know, but I do have one thing to say, NSA is spying on you, not the FBI. Switching to your secondary weapon is always faster than reloading. Not CIA but have worked within No Guys in intelligence. Most of the intelligence we get is from OSINT, open source intel. E-news articles, press releases, news networks and government announcements. Most people think that everyone in intelligence is some James Bond/Jason Bourne type of individual when in reality, the majority of analysts sit at a desk and go through news articles all day. That said, that's not the only method we have to gather intel, but it is where most of it comes from. Even analysts that are using other methods such as GeoInt, IMINT and SIGINT spend their day cropping images for minute details or replaying and monitoring the same signal over and over again. I once rented out my old farmhouse to a family. They paid the rent every month and other than mowing the lawn to save their life I didn't think anything bad about them. That all changed when the DEA called me to inform me that my renter had been murdered in Mexico and was asking my permission to search the property. Well, it turns out I had unknowingly rented my house to the Mexican mob and they were using it as safe house. It all fell apart for them when 2 of them got caught with a duffel bag full of meth. My renter had to go back to Mexico to visit his mother and was promptly murdered. Let's just say I no longer am a landlord and never will be again. Want to work for them? Prepare to do a fair amount of paperwork. The form will ask for each of your employer contact information of friends, your history of addresses, etc. They will then send an agent to interview a number of these people. Next, you have to take a psychological exam and interviewed by a psychologist. Finally, you'll have one last interview with a polygraph and a professional lie detector. My high school girlfriend worked for the National Reconnaissance Office after college. At the time, they were responsible for analyzing the nation's spy satellite photos. She told me 2 things. 1. There's a special garbage chute for classified materials. It's in the hallway. When you are new, as a hazing ritual they tell you have to shout your badge number down the chute before throwing in any materials. This is hilarious. 2. She wouldn't tell me anything about the resolution quality of the spy photos, of course, but she did let it slip that because Russian sailors will sunbathe nude on the decks of their submarines in the Black Sea, several women in the office would pin those photos up in their cubicles as ~cheesecake ~beefcake photos. So a few decades ago, US spy photos could resolve Russian penis. Edit, credit/u/seditious3. Brian Bendis, creator of Miles Morales, author of House of M, etc., has a story about doing a talk at GBCI at Langley and being told to wait in a break room, not allowed to have his laptop, phone, his own notebook or pen, but was supplied with a notebook when he walked in that'd be reviewed when he left. A young analyst walks in for coffee, sees him sitting there, recognized him as famous comic book author Brian Michael Bendis, and starts to react like a fan. He then pauses, starts sweating, and quietly asks Bendis if this is a test of some kind. CIA have different specialists, like any government branch. Field agents, paper pushers, targeting officers, programs and plans officers, paramilitary officers, language officers, information resource officers. The list goes on. I'm available if you're looking for a middle-aged bullshit artist. I wasn't FBI/CIA, I was NSA. But was integrated with both for a few assignments, and the biggest thing is that it's all way more office space than Tom Clancy. Also, every cafeteria has a buffalo chicken salad day, and it's usually the best thing they serve. Not either of these, but I've had a clearance so I can weigh in a little. 2 things. Firstly, most secret shit happens right in front of people's faces under the guise of being normal everyday stuff. Secondly, properly secret programs and operations are never named in any way that indicates what they actually are about. They're generally just 2 words chosen at random and that would rarely come up in normal conversation, stuff like cracked gorilla, which I just made up off the top of my head. So when people talk about classified stuff and its name is super topical, it's either very old, or a nickname at best. Only public programs and operations have topical names as a PR motive, like Desert Storm. Not an FBI agent myself, but I recently was in frequent contact with an FBI recruiter about open positions I was considering, and what they told me was, the process of actually becoming an FBI employee usually takes between 1 to 2 years for all the necessary background checks and training/exams. The FBI does all the stuff you see in the movies, just not as quickly. As I was watching some X-Files the night before, the recruiter told me that you can imagine that spooked me a bit. Special agents aren't spies, they're cops, which is ultimately why I didn't decide to go forward with the application, since the initial info session made it seem like special agents had more of a foreign/diplomatic role than they do, which is what drew me in the first place. If you apply for a job at GCHQ MI5 MI6/Filingdale/etc., they will talk to every member of your close family, and if any minor red flags come up you might not get the job. And also if you are Chinese/Russian/North Korean/etc. I think that it probably goes to a grandparent or great-grandparent being from that country, you will not even be able to apply. Source: Stepdad was in MI6, and fun fact, if he wants to go to certain countries, e.g. Israel, he has to ask permission from the mod to travel there. Not an FBI or CIA officer here, but my sister is a district attorney, and over the years she has prosecuted a number of animal cruelty cases. This led to her having an ongoing partnership with the FBI for the last several years. It turns out the FBI started tracking animal abuse cases about 10 to 15 years ago due to the incredibly high correlation between abusing animals when you're young and becoming a serial violent offender as an adult. My aunt has been an FBI agent for 25 years. The only thing I know about her job is that she's an office administrator. But her information went public somehow when she was part of the team that investigated the Mandalay Bay shooting in Las Vegas. Someone found the name and address of most of the agents that worked that scene and put it up online. Not sure why. She also took me and my family on a tour of the Las Vegas FBI headquarters about 15 years ago. One thing interesting that I remember about the building is that all the doors were floor-to-ceiling 9-foot doors. Thought that was weird. My ex was married to a FBI agent and was told many times about the insanely long interview period. She mentioned they went back to even interview his kindergarten teacher. She also told me if there truly was anyone in your life that was a CIA agent, you would never know. They would truly be sworn to secrecy and there would never be an instance of them causally mentioning or bragging, "Hey, I used to work at the CIA." Those people don't actually work for the CIA. So the idea anyone would comment here with actual connection with the agency is slim to none. Redacted. I was an analyst, not an agent, officer. 85% of all classified material is classified because of how it was collected, not because it is juicy, useful. Yes, you boss and co-workers said that shit about you. Most of the job is agents talking about looking forward to retirement, time-waster trainings, whining about the shitty new guys, how the job has changed, shady hiring practices, new policies designed to maximize agent liability while letting the old skirt chasers retire with BS lifetime achievement awards, and wondering how the Sam hell the current agency admins got to be in charge. By the time you finally get that amazing career case, the passion, skill, and dedication you have when you started out is long gone because the agency doesn't really care about you or any of the other cogs. The U.S. Attorney's Office isn't interested in anything they can't win without absolute certainty. Update. 2 other people agreed with me, and I apparently agreed with me as well. This is more support than you will ever get from your admins as a federal agent. Met an old, retired, CIA spook at a wedding reception. Spitting image of Colonel Sanders, he was amazing. So I asked him, I don't want you to tell me anything you can't, but I'd love to know, when Kennedy got killed, what was the talk around the water cooler in the office? He didn't halt, or pause to think. Hell, we all thought Johnson did it. Maybe off topic. I had dinner with a bunch of pasty-white overweight dudes interested in hiring us for some AI consulting. We knew they worked for the Defense Department, maybe Defense Intelligence Agency, but they couldn't tell us exactly who they worked for or what exactly they needed. At least not until we had clearance. At some point in the conversation I asked the one buff-looking guy if he ever served in the military. He said he was a Navy SEAL. I looked at the other dorky-looking dudes and asked them one at a time. They were all former Special Forces guys. I mean, you would never ever think any of these guys were Special Forces. They looked like regular IT guys. I don't know for sure, but my guess is that they were all CIA. My dad worked for GCHQ in the 80s doing voice recognition, and he can't say anything more for a decade more. The way they can recognize you by Siri/Google today was being used in the 80s. Just a bit slower. 2 family stories, even though this will probably get buried. 1. My father's uncle told everyone for his entire life that he worked at a button factory. It was only revealed after his death that he, in fact, worked at a missile factory and assembled the gyroscopes for the guidance in missiles. 2. We always knew my grandfather worked for the government at the Pentagon. We never knew exactly what he did, but every 6 months or so he would call up to talk to my mom. The conversation was pretty much always the same. My mom and grandfather would catch up for a few, then it would turn into. So I have another clearance upgrade coming up. You will probably get a call like always. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Sure, then SHT, a week later some government agency would call up, it was always a different one, and ask for my mom. They would ask a bunch of questions and that would be that. When he died from Alzheimer's, at his funeral, 4 men in black suits attended and no one knew who they were. After the burial, they approached his widow and handed her a plaque with 17 government agency symbols on it. Turns out he was responsible for interagency cooperation and training. He basically got everyone to talk to and teach each other. Now his son works for them, doing what? We don't know and don't ask. Just so you people know, there will be a case file opened in order to investigate and document this Reddit post. I worked with the Australian Federal Police with the Spider Squad doing computer stuff for them in regards to pedos and finding trafficking victims. It is the most heartbreaking work, but when you get them, the office looked like NASA after a Mars landing. Edit, left 3 and bit years ago but do get called up to lend a hand every now and then. Somewhat unrelated, but my great uncle was a FBI agent. Every time we would ask him if he had any interesting stories, but he would say he was sworn to secrecy. After 10 years of hearing this, my sister asked, "Really?" And he responded with, "No, I just don't remember anything interesting happening." When I applied for a clerical position with the FBI, someone on the subway unaccountably sat next to me and asked if I'd write her son and persuade him to apply to a school for the deaf. I'm deaf myself, how could she have known I was? So I wrote a letter. She and I met for dinner, then we went our separate ways. I've always wondered about this. Edit, so does the FBI do this in order to check you out? I didn't get the job due to an old college debt. I had a customer years ago that worked for the FBI in the support role. Tech stuff, he wasn't agent or anything. He signed up to coach Pee Wee soccer for his 5-year-old, and met his assistant coach at the first game. Monday morning he got called into his supervisor's office to meet with some agents. Apparently his assistant coach was a well-known mafia boss, and they wanted to know everything he talked about. He was shocked, because A, he had no idea, and B, they did. My father was in the Navy and ended his career working at the Pentagon. When the war started in Iraq, he'd flip out every time the news pushed weapons of mass destruction narrative. Lo and behold, there were none. Was at a tech conference and NSA had a booth with phone chargers. Nobody used them the entire conference. They were friendly. Asked me if I had the slides from the presentation my boss gave. Told them yes, I can get them, but actually I'm surprised you didn't already have them, winking face. When I was 16, I became very close, very fast friends with this guy in my school choir. His dad went on business trips for his work at Lockheed Martin 3 or 4 times a month, always to Chicago. This kid who was my friend, we went everywhere together for about 3 months, after being very casual acquaintances for about 2 years. After school we'd hang out till 10 p.m. or so almost every night, we'd get lunch at the same time and in the same place, we switched our class schedules to be in the same history or language arts sections, etc. Just your basic nerdy dudes finding a kindred spirit. I guess our sudden friendship raised an eyebrow or two because one day my friend came to school and said that his dad was asking him lots of questions about me, who my parents were, what my house was like, did he ever meet my siblings, was I an obedient student or was I snarky? My buddy suspected the questions were being relayed from his dad's boss. DL, Drive, the government entertained the possibility that I was a threat to our missile systems or satellites or something as a high school junior. Thank you guys for watching, I really hope you all enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe and like the video. See you soon.